All right, so today I'm playing The Longing, and I'm gonna try to go up the other way instead of to the secret tower. I'm gonna try to go up. Okay, I'm gonna go here. It's gonna take forever to get there. So I figured while we did that, I was gonna read something. And of course, as is tradition, we're going to read No Longer Human. I just gotta find my reading glasses, which, I probably should have prepared. And I never prepare. I never do. I'm like, I never have my reading glasses close by. It's kind of a pattern with these videos because I usually read at night before I go to bed, or I'll read during the day before Josh gets here or something. I'll just absentmindedly set the glasses down somewhere. But yeah. Um, Also, I think I'm going to be playing Silent Hill 2 because I'm having issues with the Tsukahime visual novel. Like it's like I can't get the sound to record right. I can record this okay, and I can record everything else. So at first I was having issues recording everything, and everything was coming out really quiet. Then it's just Tsukahime. Like I don't know what the deal is with that, but the music plays extremely loud, but my vocals are really quiet. But every other game records just fine. So I'm not really sure what the deal is with that, but it sort of feels like fate doesn't want me to read it. But I'm not going to give up though. I'm going to still figure out how to do it. So, what did I do? God, it's gonna take. I want to see. Okay, look. It says it's 19. Okay, so 27 hours. 27 minutes is where we're at when I went through this door. So we're gonna see how long it takes. So it's 19 days, 19 hours, 27 minutes, 19 hours, 27 minutes. See how long it takes me to get where I'm going. Ever since I quit smoking, I've been more hungry. And I also gained a little bit of weight. And I swear to God, my family was so quick to point that out for Thanksgiving. But besides that, like, I've just been, like, more hungry because food actually tastes good now. I stopped liking food for a while. For years, actually, because I felt like it didn't have a taste or it just. The process of eating is really disgusting to me. Chewing up food and putting it in your stomach and then shitting it out later. Like, that's really disgusting to me. Chewing is still disgusting to me. Mixing up certain foods and like mixing foods on my plate is really gross to me. I don't like that. So a lot of the stuff that goes with eating is really disagreeable with me. We'll say I just don't like it. But we have to eat in order to survive. We need it, the energy. And I do thoroughly enjoy things that taste good. But when cigarettes were in the picture, things that taste good didn't taste that good. Now everything has so much more flavor. And so, and also I'm just hungrier because I'm trying to get that satisfaction. Now I don't have nicotine to satisfy me, so now it's like food satisfies me. So I gained like 8 to 10 pounds. And I think I already lost a little bit because I was like freaking out about it. But the point is that always brings me down. I've been having like a little bit of a hard time lately. I'm kind of tired. I have like some back pain. I've just been kind of stuck in bed all day. And I'm exhausted with existing, if I'm going to be honest. I mean, on a scale of like Shinji Kaneki, however you want to pronounce his name, I think it's Kaneki. I'm feeling pretty Kaneki. We'll say Ken Kaneki from Tokyo Ghoul. And that's a pretty shitty scale, by the way, the Shinji to Ken Kaneki. But I don't know. I don't know. Even with meds, even with like everything going pretty okay in my life, I still hit these times where everything just feels really hopeless. Um, it reminds me of when I was like really young. I was like 20, and I lived in a small town, and I lived by myself for like a good 9 months, and I was in a small town where I didn't know anybody. I had no friends, no family. I didn't really have any connections to anybody. I didn't talk to my family for a number of years after I turned 18. I just really didn't feel like they gave a shit about me. I felt like after my grandparents died, I didn't really have a family anymore, which is weird because my family does love me, but I just felt like they didn't actually like me that much. And then after my grandparents died, I didn't feel connected to them anymore. But I obviously I have my family in my life now, and I talk to them and stuff. But like when I was 20, I didn't even imagine a world where I would talk to my family, right? So everything was on my own. And I was 20 and I was kind of irresponsible and I was living on my own. I had a job, I was in school, and everything that was going on in my life was just not that great. I was also on drugs and I was unmedicated and I have a mental disorder and I was doing like shrooms and stuff. And I want to point out that like I have schizoaffective disorder. I had it back then, even though it wasn't diagnosed. And uh I was doing like shrooms all the time and I think that shit actually made my disorder worse. I don't know. But either way, I had a boyfriend that lived with me for a while, but he turned out to be a piece of shit. So after we had many fights, things got physical. We hated each other. We were extremely toxic. But I'm gonna go out here and just say that he was a really toxic, controlling, evil motherfucker. Right? Like yeah, I was unmedicated and unhealthy, but he like totally took advantage of me. He didn't have a job. I worked all the time. He would like beat me up to steal my money for drugs and all kinds of other stuff that I don't want to get into. He was just not a good person. So after we broke up, I finally kicked him out and all kinds of shit. I lived on my own, right? And I didn't have any friends. Like there was a couple of people I knew here and there, but like it's easy for me to isolate and to turn into myself. And that's what I did. The only thing I did was go to work. I talked to my coworkers and I came home and I read every night, watched movies, but I read a lot. Like I read a lot when I lived there. Like read lots of science fiction. Um I read whatever books I could get my hands on because I was by myself. And this was before I didn't have a Facebook. I didn't have a fancy cell phone. I think I still had like a Nokia flip phone, maybe. I don't even think I had a flip phone. I think I just had a regular ass brick Nokia phone. That was my cell phone. And it was like, you know, there wasn't like all the distractions of the regular internet. I didn't have internet anyway. I was fucking broke. I used the internet at my school, but no, I didn't have internet at home. So, and I drank a lot, I did a lot of drugs, and I was fucked up, right? And all I did other than read and sit there and hate myself and want to die was be really depressed and feel hopeless and like I didn't know what to do with myself. You know, like I said, I went 9 to 10 months something like that without really having any contact with other human beings other than through my job. Like at when I the second I got off work, I would just come home and I would just sit in my apartment by myself. I had a cat for a little while towards the end, and then we moved back to Sacramento where I actually knew people, and that was pretty cool because I finally was back to where I knew my friends and I had friends because again I wasn't really talking to my family back then, but the experience leading up to that before I moved back was pretty awful. And sometimes when I play this game, it reminds me of that. This game always reminds me of some of the like worst, most isolated moments in my life, you know. And it's kind of weird that I keep playing it, but it doesn't really trigger me. It doesn't like make me cry. It just makes me think about those times. And you know, I'm pretty thankful that I'm not going through that anymore. I'm pretty thankful that I have someone like Josh in my life, someone who understands me, that I have really good friends. A lot of who watch these videos, some of them are probably watching this video, and like I'm thankful for having them in my life. They give a shit about me. They check on me, talk to me every day. I check on them. We share like our experiences and stuff. And like, I appreciate my friendships so fucking much because I know what it's like not to have friends. I know what it's like not to get along with people. I know what it's like to feel fucking isolated. So when I finally connect with other human beings, oh my god, I relish that shit. And it's unfortunate because there were many years of my life where instead of trying to connect with other people, it was so difficult to connect that I just decided to be like disconnected from everybody. Um, and I decided that that was just how I was going to be. And that I spent like my 20s like that, man. And I'm still sort of like that, but I'm much more open to making connections with people and having friendships. It's easier for me to do now. It took years and years of training, um, because it wasn't before. Because when I was a lot younger, like in high school and stuff, I was what you'd call a little bit more bubblier, I guess. Like I was more talkative. I was like really friendly, really interested in getting to know people, but I wasn't good at it. And I didn't know how to make any kind of friendships last. Like I was able to talk to people and things like that, but I didn't know how to connect on a deeper level with people. And people never seemed interested in connecting with me. After they got to know me, they were just kind of like, "Wow, this bitch is weird." You know, and I did have a couple of friends, one friend in particular who I thought that really understood me, and I still think she understood me, but she did some fucked up shit to me. I did some fucked up shit to her, I guess. I don't know. But she did me really, really, really fucking dirty. And still to this day, I look back on that and I'm like, you know, that's another person that was really controlling. Somebody else who intentionally made me feel bad about myself, intentionally tried to keep me down in the dumps so that they could feel good about themselves. Like, and it seems like in high school and junior high, I had those issues. But I was also a very angry person who was kind of an asshole about things. That's why I said I also did fucked up shit to her because I don't know. I was a firecracker. So I look back on the people who took advantage of me, people who used me, people who talked down to me and made me feel bad, and I'm like, yeah, they were in the wrong, but I mean, I wasn't exactly an angel, so whatever. But I just think about like those times in my life when I'm lonely when I play this game. And like I was saying before, it just makes me thankful for not being lonely anymore. I feel I feel good about having people in my life and having What? My spider died. It says bury friend. What? No, my only friend, you have left me. I didn't know he died. No. Aww, that's sad. I didn't realize that was his carcass this whole time. My only friend, you have left me. I will remember you forever. Aww, that's so sad. Aww. You know, I guess he wasn't crawling around up here. He's been there for a while. I remember seeing his body the other day when I was playing. I thought he was rocks. That's sad. I think I passed by him yesterday, but I was reading, so I didn't notice. Anyway, I don't remember what I was talking about. Not that it matters. Oh, let's see. Let's go there. I need to grab a mushroom on the way. Hmm. Oh yeah, I was looking for my reading glasses. That's right. Then I started just talking about random shit. Uh, I really like the music here a lot. I need to pick up one of these mushrooms on my way. Here, grab this shit. There we go. It's gonna be a long walk there. You know, they just announced a Death Stranding movie. I don't know how long it's gonna be till it comes out. I think they're just now like, I think they're thinking about making it, but they did officially announce it. And I really want to see it. I'm super stoked for it. And since the game has nothing but movie stars in it, I'm sure all those same people will be in the movie. But I really just Death Stranding is like Nier Automata to me. It's like I played Nier Automata after I played Death Stranding, and those were like two games that I played that I felt like gaming was over for me. Like I'm just like these are the experiences that I wanted to have with gaming. Like Nier Automata probably is one of the most deeply moving and philosophical experiences I've ever had in my life. Like no other movie, book, or piece of media touches that. And Death Stranding comes in a very close second. The thing that puts Nier Automata above Death Stranding is the ending of Nier Automata. It's one of the most amazing endings I've ever experienced in my life. I talk about this shit all the time, but it is the most amazing ending I've ever experienced in a video game. Ever. It's the most amazing ending of any piece of media, really. It did a great job at inspiring people and changing people for the better. Although I will still say that Nier fans are toxic as fuck, just so you know. But Death Stranding also is another one of those games that it did a great job at changing people and teaching people something important. But there also are toxic Death Stranding fans. There's just always toxic fans. But like Death Stranding is all about the importance of connections and the importance of other people in our lives. You know, there's a song in Death Stranding. It's a "We are here for you. Don't suffer." I mean, I remember hearing that in the game, and I started fucking bawling the first time I heard that song because Like, I was just like, yeah, don't suffer alone. You know, when people talk about misery loves company, I think I mentioned this before. I always have such a different take on that term. You know, people say misery loves company because they think it means that miserable people want to make you miserable, right? And I'm like, no, man, misery loves company because they're fucking miserable, and being alone and miserable is terrible, right? But I don't know what I was talking about. I know I was talking about Death Stranding, but which is the importance of connecting with other human beings. I really hope that the movie is as good as the game. I always thought that it would be a great movie when I played the game. I'm like, this would be a fucking fantastic movie. So I really, really, really hope that the movie will be as good as the game. I remember about a year ago, Kojima Productions, like he came out and he said that he wanted to make movies, and I thought, I hope they make a Death Stranding movie. So I'm really excited that they're talking about doing that now. That's pretty fucking awesome. God, this walk is gonna take forever. But I did find my reading glasses, so there's that. So I can get back to reading No Longer Human. Oh my god, I'm trying to put these on my face and it's just like not happening. Oh, there we go. Now I can get back to reading No Longer Human. I forgot where I left off. Hmm. Ah, here we go. I don't remember. Let's see. Oh, here we go. Is the lady killer at home? Horiki had taken to visiting me again at my place. I could not refuse him, even though this was the man who had made me so miserable the day I ran away. I welcomed him with a feeble smile. Your comic strips are getting quite a reputation, aren't they? There's no competing with amateurs. They're so foolhardy they don't know when to be afraid. But don't get overconfident. Your composition is still not worth a damn. He dared to act the part of the master to me. I felt my usual empty tremor of anguish at the thought. I can imagine the expression on his face if I showed him my ghost pictures. But I protested instead. Don't say such things. You'll make me cry. Hariki looked all the more elated with himself. If all you've got is just enough talent to get along, sooner or later you'll betray yourself. Just enough talent to get along. I really had to smile at that. Imagine saying that I had enough talent to get along. It occurred to me that a man like myself who dreads human beings, shuns and deceives them, might be on the surface strikingly like another man who reveres the clever, worldly wise rules for success embodied in the proverb, let sleeping dogs lie. Is it not true that no two human beings understand anything whatsoever about each other, that those who consider themselves... I saw something out the corner of my eye and that shit freaked me out. That's why I just stopped. You know, that's the problem with even when you take your meds, even when you're doing relatively good, you still have moments where you see things out the corner of your eye, you know? Like I was playing Signalis and that's a horror game. I should really stop fucking with horror games or other games like that, but I can't get enough, you know. It reminds me of Silent Hill, and it's a pretty damn good game. It's fun. But like there's a character you run into in one of the rooms, and I swear they're like 10 feet tall. They're called like Starch or Storch or something. They're some kind of like protector or robot, android, something, but they're huge, right? And they just I saw like a vision of them yesterday out of the corner of my eye. I saw them in a couple of like in real life, like right, and they look like a cartoon video game character thing. But the thing is that it was terrifying seeing something like 10 feet tall out the corner of my eye, and like so many pieces of media trigger me. Like video gaming, I don't know. I'm playing with fire when I play games. You know that because there's so many things that trigger me in games, to trigger hallucinations, trigger my voices, and I just do it anyway because it's like one of the few things in my life that gives me like real joy, that makes me feel good about like experiencing it. So many other things in my life I just don't feel good about. I feel pretty hopeless about, I guess. And I guess that's just depression talking. Oh man. Okay, so I wonder how okay, so look, we're down to 8 minutes and 30 seconds. Jesus. Now, where was I in my book? Let's see. Mm-mm-mm. Let's see. Let sleeping dogs lie. Is it not true that no two human beings understand anything whatsoever about each other, that those who consider themselves bosom friends may be utterly mistaken about their fellow, and, failing to realize this sad truth throughout a lifetime? Why did you stop? What, what is he doing? Oh, I'm there. Okay, I just didn't realize. I was like, wait a minute, why are you stopping? Okay, so it's gonna take forever to get through this darkness. I'm gonna lead him through this, then I'll get back to reading. I I can't get him to automatically walk because I don't have a. Okay. I gotta listen for when he like starts hitting like gravel on the ground, then that's when I'll uh I'll stop. Horiki, I had to admit, participated. Oh wait, where were we? May be utterly mistaken about their fellow, and, failing to realize this sad truth throughout a lifetime, weep when they read in the newspaper about his death. Horiki, I had to admit, participated in the settlement after my running away, though reluctantly, under pressure from Shizuko, and he was now behaving exactly like the great benefactor to whom I owed my rehabilitation, or like the go-between of a romance. The look on his face as he lectured me was grave. Sometimes he would barge in late at night, dead drunk, to sleep at my place, or stop by to borrow 5 yen, invariably 5 yen. You must stop your fooling around with women. You've gone far enough. Society won't stand for more. What, I wondered, did he mean by society? The plural of human beings? Where was the substance of this thing called society? I had spent my whole life thinking what society must certainly be something powerful, or excuse me, that society must certainly be something powerful, harsh and severe. But to have Horiki talk made the words, "Don't you mean yourself?" come to the tip of my tongue. But I held the words back, reluctant to anger him. Society won't stand for it. It's not society. You're the one who won't stand for it, right? If you do such a thing, society will make you suffer for it. It's not society. It's you, isn't it? Before you know it, you'll be ostracized by society. It's not society. You're going to do the ostracizing, aren't you? Words of every kind went flitting through my head. Know thy particular fearsomeness, thy knavery, cunning, and witchcraft. What I said, however, as I wiped the perspiration from my face with a handkerchief, was merely, "You've put me in a cold sweat." I smiled. From then on, however, I came to hold, almost as a philosophical conviction, the belief, what is society but an individual? From the moment I suspected that society might be an individual, I was able to act more in accordance with my own inclinations. Shizuko found that I had become rather self-willed and not so timid as before. Horiki remarked that it was funny how stingy I had become, or, as Shigeko had had it, I had stopped being so nice to Shigeko. Without a word, without a trace of a smile, I spent one day after the next looking after Shigeko and drawing comic strips, some of them so idiotic I couldn't understand them myself, for the various firms which commissioned them. Orders had gradually started coming in from other publishers, all of an even lower class than Shizuko's company. Third-rate publishers, I suppose they'd be called. I drew with extremely, excessively depressed emotions, deliberately penning each line, only to earn money for drink. When Shizuko came home from work I would dash out as if in relay with her, and head for the outdoor booths near the station to drink cheap, strong liquor. Somewhat buoyed after a bout, I would return to the apartment. I would say, "The more I look at you, the funnier your face seems. Do you know I get inspiration for my cartoons from looking at your face when you're asleep? What about your face when you sleep? You look like an old man, a man of 40. It's all your fault. You've drained me dry. Man's life is like a flowing river. What is there to fret over? On the river bank, a willow tree. Hurry to bed and stop making such a racket. Would you like something to eat? She was quite calm. She did not take me seriously. If there's any liquor left, I'll drink it. Man's life is like a flowing river. Man's river. No, I mean, the river flows. The flowing life. I would go on singing as Shizuko took off my clothes. I fell asleep with my forehead pressed against her breast. This was my daily routine. Uh, what is this? Et puis and recommence encore la le demain avec. This is in French and I just can't read it. When I first read in translation these verses by Guy Charles Cross, I blushed until my face burned. The toad. That is what I was, a toad. It was not a question of whether or not society tolerated me, whether or not it ostracized me. I was an animal lower than a dog, lower than a cat, a toad. I sluggishly moved. That's all. The quantities of liquor I consumed had gradually increased. I went drinking not only in the neighborhood of the Koenji station, but as far as the Ginza. Sometimes I spent the night out. At bars I acted the part of a ruffian, kissed women indiscriminately, did anything as long as it was not in accord with accepted usage, drank as wildly, no more so, as before my attempted suicide, was so pressed for money that I used to pawn Shizuko's clothes. A year had passed since I first came to her apartment and smiled bitterly at the torn kite. One day, along when the cherry trees were going to leaf, I stole some of Shizuko's underrobes and sashes and took them to a pawn shop. I used the money they gave me to go drinking on the Ginza. I spent 2 nights in a row away from home. By the evening of the third day I began to feel some compunctions about my behavior, and I returned to Shizuko's apartment. I unconsciously hushed my footsteps as I approached the door, and I could hear Shizuko talking with Shigeko. Why does he drink? It's not because he likes liquor, it's because he's too good. Because do all good people drink? Not necessarily, but I'm sure Daddy will be surprised. Maybe he won't like it. Look, it's jumped out of the box. Like the funny man in the comics he draws. Yeah, isn't it? Shizuko's low laugh sounded genuinely happy. I opened the door a crack and looked in. I saw a small white rabbit bounding around the room. The two of them were chasing it. They were happy, the two of them. I'd been a fool to come between them. I might destroy them both if I were not careful. A humble happiness, a mother and a child. God, I thought, if you listen to the prayers of people like myself, grant me happiness once. Only once in my whole lifetime will be enough. Hear my prayer. I felt like getting down on my knees to pray then and there. I shut the door softly, went to the Ginza, and did not return to the apartment. So he's a piece of shit, basically. My next spell as a kept man was in an apartment over a bar close by the Kyobashi station. Society. I felt as though even I were beginning at last to acquire some vague notion of what it meant. It is the struggle between one individual and another, a then and there struggle, in which the immediate triumph is everything. Human beings never submit to human beings. Even slaves practice their mean retaliations. Human beings cannot conceive of any means of survival except in terms of a single then and there contest. They speak of duty to one's country and such like things, but the object of their efforts is invariably okay. Shit, I ate my fucking mushroom. Okay, I had to figure out where I was going. Okay, so from here, this territory is brand new. Look, we're down to 59 minutes. So, here we go. Oh, the sounds are changing again. I wonder where this is going to lead. Oh, my eyes just disappeared, so I went into some kind of cave. I still can't see at all. Like, wait, I can't see. Okay, I hear gravel. The sounds changed. Maybe I'm getting close to somewhere. I wish I didn't have such bad glare on my fucking TV screen. Oh, look, there's light. Good. Coming up on something. Thank God. Oh my God, dude. So yeah, it takes over fucking 30 minutes to get here. Jesus. I have left the darkness behind me. Yeah, that took a long fucking time. Jesus. Okay, let's remember this place. Okay. Hey, is that a piece of wood? Hey. Well, now I can build a bed. Can't believe I had to come all the way the fuck up. I'm way too far away from the king now, but strangely, I don't feel the need to turn back. Well, yeah, we're like heading up towards the top. So, I mean, maybe this is the end of the game. Maybe if I can find my way out, I can end the game. And I won't need to build a bed. I can just go live life up on the surface and the king can never wake up. I wonder if I'm like abandoning my duties, man. Uh-oh, there's a ladder. Shit, man, we might actually be going to the fucking top. Hold on. Okay. Oh, there's another piece of wood. I'm gonna grab that just in case. I hear birds. Wait a minute. I hear birds. There it is, the realm beyond the kingdom, the place the king warned me about before he went to sleep. Oh, how do I get out? Inspect stones. What a tragedy. The exit is blocked by granite. Even a mattock won't help me here. So close and yet so far. Wait, I'm stuck? Are you serious? Oh boy, dude. There must be another way then. I wonder. I wonder where we have to go. Hmm. Well, let's return to my room and... Yeah, let's return to my room. The king's probably pissed off at my ass, but that's fine. Now I can get back to reading as I walk back this nice 30-minute long walk back to my room. My next spell as a kept man was in an apartment over a bar close by the Kyobashi station. Society. I felt as even I were beginning to at last to acquire some vague notion of what it meant. It is a struggle between one individual and another, a then and there struggle in which the immediate triumphs with everything. Human beings never submit to human beings. Even slaves practice their mean retaliations. Human beings cannot conceive of any means of survival except in terms of a single then and there contest. They seek of duty they speak of duty to one's country and such like things, but the object of their efforts is invariably the individual, and, even once the individual's needs have been met, again the individual comes in. The incomprehensibility of society is the incomprehensibility of the individual. The ocean is not society, it is individuals. This was how I managed to gain a modicum of freedom from my terror at the illusion of the ocean called the world. I learned to behave rather aggressively, without the endless anxious worrying I knew before, responding as it were to the needs of the moment. When I left the apartment in Koenji, I told the madam of the bar in Kyobashi, "I've left her and come to you." That was all I said, and it was enough. In other words, my single then and there contest had been decided, and from that night I lodged myself without ceremony on the second floor of her place. Society, which by all rights should have been implacable, conflicted not a particle of harm on me, and I offered no explanations. As long as the madam was so inclined, everything was all right. At the bar I was treated like a customer, like the owner, like an errand boy, like the relative of management. One might have expected that I would be considered a very dubious character, but society was not in the least suspicious of me, and the regular customers of the bar treated me with almost painful kindness. They called me by my first name and bought me drinks. I gradually came to relax my vigilance towards the world. I came to think that it was not such a dreadful place. My feelings of panic had been molded by the unholy fear aroused in me by such superstitions of science as the hundreds of thousands of whooping cough germs borne by the spring breezes, the hundreds of thousands of eye destroying bacteria which infest the public baths, the hundreds of thousands of microbes in the barber shop which will cause baldness, the swarms of scabious parasites infecting the leather straps in the subway cars, or the tapeworm, fluke, and heaven knows what eggs that undoubtedly lurk in a raw fish and an undercooked beef and pork, or the fact that if you walk barefoot a tiny sliver of glass may penetrate the sole of your foot, and after circulating through your body reach the eye and cause blindness. There is no disputing the accurate scientific fact that millions of germs are floating, swimming, wriggling everywhere. At the same time, however, if you ignore them completely, they lose all possible connection with yourself, and at once become nothing more than vanishing ghosts of science. This, too, I came to understand. I had been so terrorized by scientific statistics, if 10 million people each leave over 3 grains of rice from their lunch, how many sacks of rice are wasted in one day? If 10 million people each economize one paper handkerchief a day, how much pulp will be saved? That whenever I left over a single grain of rice, whenever I blew my nose, I imagined that I was wasting mountains of rice, tons of paper, and I fell prey to a mood dark as if I had committed some terrible crime. But these were the lies of science, the lies of statistics and mathematics. You can't collect 3 grains of rice from everybody. Even as exercise in multiplication or division, it ranks as one of the most elementary and feeble-minded problems, about on par with the computation of the percentage of times that people slip in dark, unlighted bathrooms and fall into the toilet, or the percentage of passengers who get their feet caught in the space between the door of a subway train and the edge of the platform, or other such footling exercises in probability. These events seem entirely within the bounds of possibility, but I have never heard of a single instance of anyone hurting himself by falling into the toilet. I felt pity and contempt for the self which until yesterday had accepted such hypothetical situations as eminently factual scientific truth, and was terrified by them. This shows the degree to which I had bit by bit arrived at a knowledge of the real nature of what is called the world. Having said that, I must now admit that I was still afraid of human beings, and before I could meet even the customers in the bar, I had to fortify myself by gulping down a glass of liquor. The desire to see frightening things. That was what drew me every night to the bar, where, like the child who squeezes his pet all the harder when he actually fears it a little, I proclaimed to the customers standing at the bar my drunken, bungling theories of art. A comic strip artist, and at that an unknown one, knowing no great joys, nor, for that matter, any great sorrows. I craved desperately some great savage joy, no matter how immense the suffering that might ensue, but my only actual pleasure was to engage in meaningless chatter with the customers and to drink their liquor. Close to a year had gone by since I took up this debased life in the bar in Kiyobashi. My cartoons were no longer confined to the children's magazines, but now appeared also in the cheap pornographic magazines that are sold in railway stations. Under a silly pseudonym I drew dirty pictures of naked women to which I usually appended appropriate verses from the Rubaiyat. Waste not your hour, nor in the vain pursuit of this and that endeavor and dispute. Better be merry with the fruitful grape, than sadden after none or bitter fruit. Some of the glories of this world, and some sigh for the prophet's paradise to come. Ah, take the cash, and let the promise go, nor heed the music of a distant drum, and that inverted bowl we call the sky, whenever some crawling cooped we live and die. Lift not your hands to it for help, for it as impotently rolls as you or I. There was at this period of my life a maiden who pleaded with me to give up drink. You can't go on drinking every day from morning to night that way. She was a girl of 17 or so who worked in a little tobacco shop across the way from the bar. Yoshiko, that was her name, was a pale girl with crooked teeth. Whenever I went to buy cigarettes she would smile and repeat her advice. What's wrong with drinking? Why is it bad? Better be merry with the fruitful grape than sadden after none or bitter fruit. Many years ago there was a Persian. No, let's skip it. Oh, plague no more with human or divine. Tomorrow's tangle itself resign, and lose your fingers in the tresses of the cypress slender minister of wine. Do you understand? No, I don't. What a stupid little girl you are. I'm going to kiss you. Go ahead. She pouted out her lower lip, not in the least abashed. You silly fool, you and your ideas of chastity. There was something unmistakable in Yoshiko's expression which marked her as a virgin who had never been defiled. Soon after the New Year, one night in the dead of winter, I drunkenly staggered out in the cold to buy some cigarettes and fell into the manhole in front of her shop. I shouted for Yoshiko to come save me. She hauled me out and bandaged my bruised right arm. Yoshiko, earnest and unsmiling, said, "You drink too much. The thought of dying has never bothered me, but getting hurt, losing blood, becoming crippled, and the like, no thanks." I thought as I watched Yoshiko bandage my hand that I might cut down on my drinking. "I'm giving it up. From tomorrow on I won't touch a drop." "Do you mean it?" "There's no doubt about it. I'll give it up. If I give it up, you'll marry me, Yoshiko?" Asking her to marry me was, however, intended only as a joke. Natch, Natch for naturally, was popular at the time. Right. Let's hook fingers on that. I promise I'll give it up. The next day, as might have been expected, I spent drinking. Wow. Towards evening, I made my way to Yoshiko's shop on shaking legs and called to her, "Yoshiko, I'm sorry. I got drunk." "Oh, you're awful, trying to fool me by pretending to be drunk." I was startled. I felt suddenly quite sober. "No, it's the truth. I really have been drinking. I'm not pretending." "Don't tease me. You're mean." She suspected nothing. "I should think you could tell by just looking at me. I've been drinking today since noon. Forgive me. You're a good actor." "I'm not acting, you little idiot. I'm going to kiss you." "Go ahead." "No, I'm not qualified. I'm afraid I'll have to give up the idea of marrying you. Look at my face. Red, isn't it? I've been drinking. It's just the sunset shining on it. Don't try to fool me. You promised yesterday you wouldn't drink. You wouldn't break a promise, would you? We hooked fingers. Don't tell me you've been drinking. It's a lie. I know it is." Yoshiko's pale face was smiling as she sat there inside the dimly lit shop. What a holy thing uncorrupted virginity is, I thought. I had never slept with a virgin, a girl younger than myself. I'd marry her. I wanted once in my lifetime to know what that great savage joy, no matter how immense the suffering that might ensue. I had always imagined that the beauty of virginity was nothing more than the sweet sentimental illusion of stupid poets, but it really is alive and present in the world. We would get married. In the spring we'd go together on bicycles to see waterfalls framed in green leaves. I made up my mind on the spot. It was then and there decision. I did not hesitate to steal the flower. Not long afterwards we were married. The joy I obtained as a result of this action was not necessarily great or savage, but the suffering which ensued was staggering, as so far surpassing what I had imagined that even describing it as horrendous would not quite cover it. The world, after all, was still a place of bottomless horror. It was by no means a place of childlike simplicity, where everything could be settled by a single then and there decision. The Third Notebook, Part 2. Horiki and myself. Despising each other as we did, we were constantly together, thereby degrading ourselves. If that is what the world calls friendship, the relations between Horiki and myself were undoubtedly those of friendship. I threw myself on the chivalry of the madam of the bar in Kyobashi. It is a strange use of the word to speak of a woman's chivalry, but in my experience, at least in the cities, the women possessed a greater abundance of what might be termed chivalry than the men. Most men concerned themselves, all fear and trembling, only with appearances, and were stingy to boot. She enabled me to marry Yoshiko and to rent a room on the ground floor of an apartment building near the Sumatra River, which we made our home. I gave up drink and devoted my energies to drawing cartoons. After dinner we would go out together to see a movie, and on the way back we would stop at a milk bar or buy pots of flowers. But more than any of these things it gave me pleasure just to listen to the words or watch the movements of my little bride, who trusted in me with all her heart. Then, just when I begun to entertain faintly in my breast the sweet notion that perhaps there was a chance I might turn one of these days into a human being, and be spared the necessity of a horrible death, Horiki showed up again. He hailed me. "How's the great lover? Why, what's this? Do I detect a note of caution in your face? You, of all people? I've come today as a messenger from the lady of Koenji." He lowered his voice and thrust his jaw in the directions of Yoshiko, who was preparing tea in the kitchen, as much as to ask whether it was all right to continue. I answered nonchalantly, "It doesn't matter. You can say anything before her." As a matter of fact, Yoshiko was what I should like to call a genius at trusting people. She suspected nothing of my relations with the madam of the bar in Kyobishi, and even after I told her all about the incident which occurred in Kamakura, she was equally unsuspicious of my relationships relations with Tsuneko. It was not because I was an accomplished liar. At times I spoke quite bluntly, but Yoshiko seemed to take everything I said as a joke. You seem to be just as cocksure of yourself as ever. Anyway, it's nothing important. She asked to tell you to visit her once in a while. Just when I was beginning to forget, the bird of ill omen came flapping my way, to rip open with its beak the wounds of memory. All at once shame over the past and the recollections of my sin unfolded themselves before my eyes, and, seized by a terror so great it made me want to shriek, I could not sit still a moment longer. How about a drink? I asked. Suits me, said Horiki and myself. Though outwardly he appeared to be a human being like the rest, I sometimes felt he was exactly like myself. Of course, that was only after we had been making the round of the bars, drinking cheap liquor here and there. When the two of us met face to face, it was as if we immediately metamorphosed into dogs of the same shape and pelt, and we bounded out through the streets covered with fallen snow. That was how we happened to warm over. As it were, the embers of our old friendship, we went together to the bar in Kyobashi, and eventually we two, Sao's dogs, visited Shizuko's apartment in Koenji, where I sometimes spent the night. I shall never forget. It was a sticky hot summer's night. Horiki had come to my apartment about dusk wearing a tattered summer kimono. He told me that an emergency had come up and he had been obliged to pawn his summer suit. He asked me to lend him some money because he was anxious to redeem the suit before his aged mother found out. The matter apparently concerned him genuinely. As ill luck would have it, I hadn't any money at my place. As usual, I sent Yoshiko out to the pawn shop with some of her clothes. I lent Horiki what he needed from the money she received, but there was still a little left over, and I asked Yoshiko to buy some gin with it. We went up on the roof of the apartment house, where we celebrated the evening cool with a dismal little party. Faint miasmic gusts of wind blew in from the river every now and then. We began a guessing game of tragic and comic nouns. This game, which I myself had invented, was based on the propositions that just as nouns could be divided into masculine, feminine, and neuter, so there was a distinction between tragic and comic nouns. For example, the system decreed that steamship and steam engine were both tragic nouns, while streetcar and bus were comic. Perhaps who failed to see why this was true were obviously unqualified to discuss art, and a playwright who included even a single tragic noun in a comedy showed himself a failure, if for no other reason. The same held equally true of comic nouns in tragedies. I began the questioning. Are you ready? What is tobacco? Tragic, Horiki answered promptly. What about medicine? Powder or pills? Injection? Tragic. I wonder. Don't forget, there are hormone in injections too. No, there's no question, but it's tragic. First of all, there's a needle. What could be more tragic than a needle? You win. But you know, medicines and doctors are, surprisingly enough, comic. What about death? Comic. And that goes for Christian ministers and Buddhist priests, too. Bravo! Then life must be tragic. Wrong. It's comic, too. In that case, everything becomes comic. Here's one more for you. What about cartoonist? You should possibly call it a comic noun. Could you? Tragic. An extremely tragic noun. What do you mean? Extremely tragic is a good description of you. Any game which can drop to the level of such abysmal jokes is despicable, but we were very proud of what we considered to be an extremely witty diversion, never before known in the salons of the world. I had invented one other game of a rather similar character, a guessing game of antonyms. The antonym of black is white, but the antonym of white is red. The antonym of red is black. I ask now, what is the antonym of flower? Horiki frowned in thought. Let me see. There used to be a restaurant called the Flower Moon. It must be moon. That's not an antonym. It's more of a synonym. Aren't star and garter synonyms? It's not an antonym. I've got it. It's bee. Bee? Aren't there bees, or is it ants, in peonies? What are you trying to do? No bluffing now. I know. Clustering clouds that cover the flowers. You must be thinking of clouds that cover the moon. That's right. Wind that destroys the blossom. It's the wind. The antonym is flower is wind. Pretty poor. Sounds like a line out of a popular song. You betray your origins. Well, then, how about something more recondite? Say, a mandolin. Still no good. The antonym of flower. You're supposed to name the thing in the world which is least like a flower. That's what I'm trying to do. Wait. What about this? A woman. Then what's a synonym for woman? Entrails. You're not very poetic, are you? Well then, what's the antonym for entrails? Milk. That's pretty good. One more in that vein. Shame. What's the antonym of shame? Shameless. A popular cartoonist I would name. What about Masao Hariki? By the time we reached this point, we had gradually become incapable of laughter, and were beginning to experience the particular oppressiveness, as if one's head were stuffed with broken glass, that comes from getting drunk on gin. Don't be cheeky now. I, for one, have never been tied up like a common criminal the way you have. I was taken aback. Horiki at heart did not treat me like a full human being. He could only consider me as a living corpse of a would-be suicide, a person dead to shame, an idiot ghost. His friendship had no other purpose but to utilize me in whichever way would most further his own pleasures. This thought naturally did not make me very happy, but I realized after a moment that it was entirely to be expected that Horiki take this view of me, that from long ago, even as a child, I seemed to lack the qualifications of a human being, and that, for all I knew, contempt, even from Horiki, might be entirely merited. I said, feigning tranquillity, "Crime. What's the antonym of crime?" "This is a hard one. The law, of course," Horiki answered flatly. I looked at his face again. Caught in the flashing red light of a neon sign at a nearby building, Horiki's face had somber dignity of the relentless prosecutor. I felt shaken to the core. Crime belongs in a different category. Imagine saying that the law was the antonym of crime, but perhaps everybody in society can go on living in self-satisfaction, thanks to just simple concepts. They think the crime hatches where there are no policemen. Well, in the case, what would it be? God? That would suit you. There's something about you that smells a little of Christian priest. I find it offensive. Let's not dispose of problems so lightly. Let's think about it more Let's think about it a bit more together. Isn't it an interesting theme? I feel you can tell everything about a man just from his answer to this one question. You can't be serious. The antonym of crime is virtue, a virtuous citizen. In short, someone like myself. Let's not joke. Virtue is the antonym of vice, not of crime. Are vice and crime different? They are, I think. Virtue and vice are concepts invented by human beings, words for morality which human beings arbitrarily devised. What a nuisance. Well, I suppose it is God in that case. God, God. You can't go wrong if you leave everything at God. I'm hungry. Yoshiko is cooking some beans downstairs now. Thanks. I like beans. He lay down on the floor, his hands tucked under his head. I said, "You don't seem to be very interested in crime. That's right. I'm not a criminal like you. I may indulge myself with a little dissipation, but I don't cause women to die, and I don't lift money from them either." The voice of a resistance, weak but desperate, spoke from somewhere in my heart. It said that I had not caused anyone to die, that I had not lifted money from anyone, but once again the ingrained habit of considering myself evil took command. It is quite impossible for me to contradict anyone to his face. I struggled with all my might to control the feelings which mounted more dangerously in me, and each intent, the result of the depressing effects of the gin. Finally I muttered almost to myself, "Actions punishable by jail sentences are not the only crimes. If we knew the antonym of crime, I think we would know its true nature: God, salvation, love, light. But for God there is the antonym Satan. For salvation there is perdition. For love there is hate. For light there is darkness. For good, evil. Crime and prayer, crime and repentance, crime and confession, crime and... No, they're all synonyms. What is the opposite of crime? Well, if you spell crime backwards, no, that doesn't make sense. But the word does contain the letters rice. Rice. I'm hungry. Bring me something to eat. Why don't you go get it yourself? My voice shook with a rage I had almost never before betrayed. All right, I'll go downstairs. Then Yoshiko and I will commit a crime together. Personal demonstration is better than empty debates. The antonym of crime is rice. No, it's beans. He was so drunk he could barely articulate the words. Do as you please, only get the hell out of here. He got up mumbling incoherently. Crime and an empty stomach. Empty stomachs and beans. No, those are synonyms. Crime and punishment. Dostoevsky. These words grazed over a corner of my mind, startling me. Just supposing Dostoevsky ranged crime and punishment side by side, not as synonyms but as antonyms. Crime and punishment, absolutely incompatible ideas, irreconcilable as oil and water. I felt I was beginning to understand what lay at the bottom of the scum-covered, turbid pond, the chaos of Dostoevsky's mind. No, I still don't quite see. Such thoughts were flashing through my head like a revolving lantern. I've always had trouble pronouncing this man's name, by the way, so I just don't even try that hard anymore. Revolving lantern when I heard a voice. "Extraordinary beans you got here. Come have a look." Horiki's voice and color had changed. Just a minute before he had staggered off downstairs, and he was back again before I knew it. "What is it?" A strange excitement ran through me. The two of us went down from the roof to the second floor, and were halfway down the stairs to my room on the ground floor when Horiki stopped me and whispered, "Look," he pointed. A small window opened over my room, through which I could see the interior. The light was lit, and two animals were visible. My eyes swam, but I murmured to myself through my violent breathing, "This is just another aspect of the behavior of human beings. There's nothing to be surprised at." I stood petrified on the staircase, not even thinking to help Yoshiko. Horiki noisily cleared his throat. I ran back up to the roof to escape and collapsed there. The feelings which assailed me as I looked up at the summer night sky, heavy with rain, were not of fury or hatred, nor even of sadness. They were of overpowering fear. Not the terror of sight of ghosts in a graveyard might arouse, but rather a fierce, ancestral dread that could not be expressed in 4 or 5 words, something perhaps like encountering in the sacred grove of Shinto shrine the white-clothed body of gold. My hair turned prematurely gray from that night. I had now lost all confidence in myself, doubted all men immeasurably, and abandoned all hope for things of this world, all joy, all sympathy, eternally. This was truly the decisive incident of my life. I had been split through the forehead between the eyebrows, a wound that was a throb with pain whenever I came in contact with a human being. I sympathize, but I hope it's taught you a lesson. I won't be coming back. This place is a perfect hell. But you should forgive Yoshiko. After all, you're not much of a prize yourself. So long. Hariki was not stupid enough to linger in an embarrassing situation. I got up and poured myself a glass of gin. I wept bitterly, crying aloud. I could have wept and on interminably. Without my realizing it, Yoshiko was standing haplessly behind me bearing a platter with the mountains of beans on it. He told me he wouldn't do anything. It's all right. Don't say anything. You didn't know enough to distrust others. Sit down. Let's eat the beans. We sat down side by side and ate the beans. Is trustfulness a sin, I wonder? The man was an illiterate shopkeeper, an undersized runt of about 30, who used to ask me to draw cartoons for him, and then would make a great ado over the trifling sums of money he paid for them. The shopkeeper, not surprisingly, did not come again. I felt less hatred for him than I did for Horiki. Why, when he first discovered them together, had he not cleared his throat then, instead of returning to the roof to inform me? On nights when I could not sleep, hatred and loathing for him gathered inside me until I groaned under the pressure. I neither forgave nor refused to forgive her. Yoshiko was a genius at trusting people. She didn't know how to suspect anyone, but the misery it caused. God, I ask you, is trustfulness a sin? It was less the fact that Yoshiko's defilement than the defilement of her trust in people which became so persistent a source of grief as almost to render my life insupportable. For someone like myself, in whom the ability to trust others is so cracked and broken that I am wretchedly timid and am forever trying to read the expression on people's faces, Yoshiko immaculate trustfulness seemed clean and pure, like a waterfall among green leaves. One night sufficed to turn the waters of this place cascade yellow and muddy. Yoshiko from that night to fret over my every smile or frown. Yoshiko began from that night to fret over my every smile and frown. She would jump when I called her, and seemed at a loss which way to turn. She remained tense and afraid, no matter how much I tried to make her smile, no matter how much I played the clown. She began to address me with an excessive profusion of honorifics. Is immaculate trustfulness, after all, a source of sin? I looked up various novels in which married women are violated. I tried reading them, but I could not find a single instance of a woman violated in so lamentable a manner of Yoshiko. Her story obviously could never be made into a novel. I might actually have felt better if anything in the least resembling love existed between the runt of a shopkeeper and Yoshiko. But one summer night Yoshiko was trusting, and that was all there was to it. And on account of that incident I was cleft between the eyebrows. My voice became hoarse, my hair turned prematurely gray, and Yoshiko was condemned to a life of anxiety. In most of the novels I read, emphasis was placed on whether or not the husband forgave the wife's act. It seemed to me, however, that any husband who still retains the right to forgive or not to forgive is a lucky man. If he thinks that he can't possibly forgive his wife, he ought, instead of making such a great fuss, to get divorced as quickly as possible and find a new wife. If he can't do that, he should forgive and show forbearance. In either case, the matter can be completely settled in whichever way the husband's feelings dictate. In other words, even though such an incident certainly comes as a great shock to the husband, it is a shock and not an endless series of waves which lash back at him over and over again. It seemed to me a problem which could be disposed of by the wrath of any husband with authority. But in our case the husband was without authority, and when I thought things over, I came to feel that everything was my fault. Far from becoming enraged, I could not utter a word of complaint. It was on account of that rare virtue she possessed that my wife was violated, a virtue I long had prized, the unbearably pitiful one called immaculate trustfulness. Is immaculate trustfulness a sin? Now that I harbored doubts about the one virtue I had depended on, I lost all comprehension of everything around me. My only resort was drink. My face coarsened markedly, and my teeth fell out from the interminable drinking bouts to which I surrendered myself. The cartoons I drew now verged on the pornographic. No, I'll come out with it plainly. I began about this time to copy pornographic pictures which I secretly peddled. I wanted money to buy gin. When I looked at Yoshiko, always averting her glance and trembling, doubt gave birth to fresh doubt. It was unlikely, wasn't it, that a woman with absolutely no defenses should have yielded only that once with the shopkeeper? Had she also been with Horiki, or with somebody I didn't even know? I hadn't the courage to question her. Writhing in my usual doubts and fears, I drank gin. Sometimes, when drunk, I timidly attempted a few sneaking ventures at indirect questioning. In my heart, I bounded foolishly from joy to sorrow at her responses, but on the surface I never ceased my immoderate clowning. Afterwards I would inflict on Yoshiko an abominable, hellish caressing before I dropped into a dead sleep. Towards the end of that year I came home late one night, blind drunk. I felt like having a glass of sugar water. Yoshiko seemed to be asleep, so I went myself to the kitchen to look for the sugar bowl. I took off the lid and peered inside. There was no sugar, only a thin black cardboard box. I took it absent-mindedly in my hand and read the label. I was startled. Somebody had scratched off most of the writing, but the part in Western letters remained intact. The word "dial" was legible. Dial. At the time, I relied entirely on gin and never took sleeping pills. Insomnus, however, was a chronic complaint with me, and I was familiar with most sleeping pills. The contents of this one box of Dial was unquestionably more than sufficient to cause death. The seal of the box was unbroken. I must have hidden it here at some time or other in the past when I felt I might need it, after first scratching off the label. The poor child could not read Western letters, and I must have thought it was enough if I just scratched off with my nails the part of the label in Japanese. You have committed no sin. I very quietly filled a glass with water, careful not to make the least noise, and deliberately broke the seal of the box. I poured the whole contents into my mouth. I calmly drained the glass of water in one gulp. I switched off the light and went to bed at once. For 3 days and nights I lay as one dead. The doctor considered it an accident, and was kind enough to postpone reporting to the police. I am told that first words I murmured as I began to recover consciousness were, "I'm going home." It's not clear even to myself what place I meant by home, but in any case these were the words I said, accompanied, I was told, by profuse weeping. Gradually the fog cleared, and when I regained consciousness there was Flatfish sitting in my pillow, a most unpleasant expression on his face. The last time was also at the end of the year, wasn't it? He always chooses the end of the year, just when everybody is frantically busy. He'll prove the death of me if he keeps on doing such things. The madam of the bar in Kiyobashi was the recipient of Flatfish's discourse. I called, "Madam, what, have you come too?" She held a smiling face directly over mine as she spoke. I burst into tears. "Take me away from Yoshiko." The words came as a surprise even to myself. The madam rose to her feet and breathed a barely audible sigh. Then I made an utterly unpremeditated slip of the tongue, one so comic, so idiotic that it all but defies description. I said, "I'm going somewhere where there aren't any women." Flatfish was the first to respond, with loud guffaws. The madam tittered, and in the midst of my tears I turned red and smiled despite myself. "An excellent idea," said Flatfish, still continuing his inane laughter. "You really ought to go a place with no women. Everything goes wrong as soon as women are around you. Yes, a place without women is a fine suggestion. A place without women." And the worst of it was that my delirious ravings were later to be realized in the most ghastly way. Yoshiko seemed to have got the idea that I had swallowed the overdose of sleeping pills by way of atonement for her sin, and this made her all the more uncertain before me. She never smiled, and she looked as if she could hardly be persuaded to open her mouth. I found the apartment so oppressive that I would end by going out as usual to swill cheap liquor. After the Dial incident, however, I lost weight noticeably. My arms and legs felt heavy, and I often was too lazy to draw cartoons. Flatfish had left some money when he came to visit me. He said, "It's a little gift from me," and offered it exactly as if it were his own money, though I gathered it actually came from my brothers as usual. This time, unlike when I ran from Flatfish's house, I was able to get a vague glimpse through the theatrical airs of importance. I I too was clever, and, pretending to be completely unaware of what was going on, humbly offered Flatfish my thanks for the money. It nevertheless gave me a strange feeling, as if at the same time I could and could not understand why people like Flatfish resorted to such complicated tricks. I did not hesitate to use the money to to go by myself to the hot springs of southern Izu. However, I am not the kind to make a leisurely tour of hot springs, and at the thought of Yoshiko I became so infinitely forlorn as to destroy completely the peaceful frame of mind which had permitted me to gaze from my hotel window at the mountains. I did not change into sports clothes. I didn't even take the waters. Instead, I would rush out into the filthy little bars that looked like souvenir stands and drink gin until I fairly swam in it. I returned to Tokyo only sicklier for the trip. The night I returned to Tokyo, the snow was falling heavily. I drunkenly wandered along the rows of saloons behind the Ginza, singing to myself over and over again. So softly it was only a whisper. From here it's hundreds of miles to home. From here it's hundreds of miles to home. I walked along kicking with the point of my shoes and snow, which was accumulating. Suddenly I vomited. This was the first time I had brought up blood. I had, wait. This was the first time I had brought up blood. It formed a big rising flag in the snow. I squatted there for a while. Then with both hands I scooped up snow from places which were clean and washed my face. I wept. Where does this little path go? Where does this little path go? I could hear indistinctly from the distance, like an auditory hallucination, the voice of a little girl singing. Unhappiness. There are all kinds of unhappy people in this world. I suppose it would be no exaggeration to say that the world is composed entirely of unhappy people. But those people can fight their unhappiness with society fairly and squarely. And society, for its part, easily understands and sympathizes with such struggles. My unhappiness stemmed entirely from my own vices, and I had no way of fighting anybody. If I had ever attempted to voice anything in the nature of protest, even a single mumbled word, the whole of society, and not only Flatfish, would undoubtedly have cried out flabbergasted. Imagine the audacity of him talking like that. Am I what they call an egoist, or am I the opposite, a man of excessively weak spirit? I really don't know myself, but since I seem in either case to be a mass of vices, I drop steadily, inevitably, into unhappiness, and I have no specific plan to stave off my descent. I got up from the snowbank with the thought I ought to get the proper kind of medicine without delay. I went into the pharmacy nearby. The proprietress and I exchanged looks as I entered. For that instant her eyes popped, and she held her head lifted as if caught in the light of a flashbulb. She stood ramrod stiff, but in her wide-open eyes there was no trace of alarm or dislike. Her look spoke of longing, almost of the seeking for salvation. I thought, she must be unhappy too. Unhappy people are sensitive to the unhappiness of others. Not until then did I happen to notice that she stood with difficulty, supporting herself on crutches. I suppressed a desire to run up beside her, but I could not take my eyes from her face. I felt tears starting, and saw the tears brimming from her big eyes. That was all. Without saying a word, I went out of the pharmacy and staggered back to my apartment. I asked Yoshiko to prepare a salt solution. I drank it. I went to sleep without telling her anything. The whole of the following day I spent in bed, giving as excuse a lie to the effect that I had felt a cold coming on. At night my agitation over the blood I had secretly coughed became too much for me, and I got out of bed. I went to the pharmacy again. This time I confessed with a smile to the woman what my physical condition was. In humble tones I asked her advice. You'll have to give up drinking. We were like blood relatives. I may have alcoholic poisoning. I still want to drink. You mustn't. My husband used to soak himself in liquor in spite of the TB. He claimed that he killed the germs with liquor. That's how he shortened his life. I feel so on edge I can't stand it. I'm afraid. I'm no good for anything. I'll give you some medicine, but please cut out the drinking at least. She was a widow with only one son. Excuse me, she was a widow with an only son. The boy had been attending a medical school somewhere in the provinces, but was now on leave of absence from school with the same illness that killed his father. Her father-in-law lay abed in the house with palsy. She herself had been unable to move one side of her body since she was 5, when she had infantile paralysis. Hobbling here and there in the shop on her crutches, she selected various medicines from the different shelves and explained what they were. This is a medicine to build your blood. This is a serum for vitamin injections. Here is the hypodermic needle. These are calcium pills. This is the diatis to keep you from getting an upset stomach. Her voice was full of tenderness as she explained each each of the half-dozen medicines. The affection of this unhappy woman was, however, to prove too intense. At last she said, "This is a medicine to be used when you need a drink so badly you can't stand it." She quickly wrapped the little box. It was morphine. She said that it was no more harmful than liquor, and I believed her. For one thing, I was just at the stage where I had come to feel the squalor of drunkenness, and I was overjoyed to be able to escape after such long bondage to the devil called alcohol. Without a flicker of hesitation, I injected the morphine into my arm. My insecurity, fretfulness, and timidity were swept away completely. I turned into an expansively optimistic and fluent talker. The injection made me forget how weak my body was, and I applied myself energetically to my cartoons. Sometimes I would burst out laughing even while I was drawing. He was high as fuck. I had intended to take one shot a day, but it became two, then three. Oh, you were addicted. When it reached out four, I could no longer work unless I had my shots. All I needed was the woman at the pharmacy to admonish me, saying how dreadful it would be if I became an addict, for me to feel that I had already become a fairly confirmed addict. I am very susceptible to people's suggestions. When people say to me, "You really shouldn't spend this money, but I suppose you will anyway," I have the strange illusion that I would be going against expectations and somehow doing wrong unless I spent it. I invariably spend all the money immediately. My uneasiness over having become an addict actually made me seek more of a drug. "I beg you, one more box. I promise I'll pay you at the end of the month. You can pay the bill any old time as far as I'm concerned, but the police are very troublesome, you know. Something impure, dark, reeking of the shady character always hovers above me. I beg you, tell them something or put them off the track. I'll give you a kiss." She blushed. I pursued the theme. "I can't do any work unless I have the medicine. It's kind of energy builder for me." "How about hormone injections?" "Don't be silly. It's the liquor or the medicine, one or the other. If I haven't got it, I can't work. You mustn't drink." "That's right. I haven't touched a drop of liquor since I began with that medicine. I'm in fine physical shape, thanks to you. I don't intend to go on drawing stupid cartoons forever, you know. Now that I've stopped drinking and have straightened myself out, I'm going to study. I'm sure I can become a great painter. I'll show you. If only I can get over their critical period. So, please, how about a kiss?" She burst out laughing. "What a nuisance you are. You may already have become an addict for all I know." Her crutches clacked as she hobbled over to the shelf to take down some medicine. "I can't give you a whole box. You'd use it all up. Here's half. How stingy you've become. Well, if that's the best you can do." I gave myself a shot as soon as I got back home. Yoshiko timidly asked, "Doesn't it hurt?" "Of course it hurts, but I've got to do it, no matter how painful it is. That's the only way to increase the efficiency of my work. You've noticed how healthy I've been as late." Then, playfully, "Well, to work, to work, to work." All right. So, gonna cut it off there. Well, that was a nice adventurous day. I got all the way to the top and I couldn't even go, so that was pretty disappointing. But it was interesting. And we are almost done with No Longer Human, by the way. Let's see, there are about, uh, like 10 more pages, if even. So yeah, I'm gonna finish it next time. Actually, I should probably just finish it now. Once, late at night, I knocked on the door of the pharmacy. As soon as I caught sight of the woman in her nightgown hobbling forward on her crutches, I threw my arms around her and kissed her. I pretended to weep. She handed me a box without a word. By the time I had come to realize acutely that drugs were as abominable, as foul, no, fouler, than gin, I had already become an out-and-out addict. I had truly reached the extreme of shamelessness. Out of the desire to obtain the drug, I began again to make copies of pornographic pictures. I also had what might literally be called a very ugly affair with the crippled woman from the pharmacy. I thought, "I want to die. I want to die more than ever before. There's no chance now of a recovery. No matter what sort of thing I do, no matter what I do, it's sure to be a failure. Just a final coating applied to my shame." That dream of going on bicycles to see a waterfall framed in summer leaves, it was not for the likes of me. All that can happen now is that one foul, humiliating sin will be piled on another, and my sufferings will become only the more acute. I want to die. I must die. Living itself is the source of sin. I paced back and forth, half in a frenzy, between my apartment and the pharmacy. The more I worked, the more the more morphine I consumed, and my debt at the pharmacy reached a frightening figure. Whenever the woman caught sight of my face, the tears came to her eyes. I also wept. Inferno. I decided, as a last resort, I wonder if she was weeping because she knows she's the one who got him addicted. I decided as a last resort, my last hope of escaping the inferno, to write a long letter to my father in which I confessed my circumstances fully and accurately, with the exception, of course, of my relations with women. It failed. If it failed, I had no choice but to hang myself, a resolve which was tantamount to a bet on the existence of God. The result was to make everything only the worse. The answer, for which I waited day and night, never came, and my anxiety and dread caused me to increase still further the dosage of the drug. I made up my mind one day to give myself 10 shots that night and throw myself in the river. But on the afternoon of the very day I chose the event, Flatfish appeared with Horiki in tow, seemingly having managed with his diabolical intuition to sniff out my plan. Horiki sat in front of me and said, with a gentle smile, the like of which I had never before seen on his face, "I hear you've coughed blood." I felt so grateful, so happy for that gentle smile that I averted my face and wept. I was completely shattered and smothered by that one gentle smile. I was bundled into an automobile. Flatfish informed me in a quiet tone, so calm indeed that it might almost have been characterized as compassionate, that I should have to go for a time being to a hospital, that I should leave everything to them. Weeping helplessly, I obeyed whatever the two of them decreed. Like a man bereft of all will, decision, and everything. The four of us, Yoshiko came along, were tossed in the car for quite a long time. About dusk we pulled up at the entrance to a large hospital in the woods. My only thought was, this must be a sanatorium. I was given a careful, almost unpleasantly considerate examination by a young doctor. "You'll need to rest and recuperate here for a while," he said, pronouncing the words with a smile I could only describe as bashful. When Flatfish, Horiki, and Yoshiko were about to go, leaving me there alone, Yoshiko handed me a bundle containing a change of clothes, then silently offered from her handbag the hypodermic needle and the remaining medicine. Is it possible she actually believed after all that it was just an energy building medicine? No, I said. I won't need it anymore. This was a really rare event. I don't think it is an exaggeration to say that it was the one and only time in my life that I refused something offered to me. My unhappiness was the unhappiness of a person who could not say no. I had been intimidated by the fear that if I declined something offered to me, a yawning crevice would open between the other person's heart and myself, which could never be mended through all eternity. Yet I now refused, in a perfectly natural manner, the morphine which I had so desperately craved. Was it because I was struck by Yoshiko's divine ignorance? I wonder if I had not already ceased at that instant to be an addict. The young doctor with the bashful smile immediately ushered me to a ward. The key grated the lock behind me. I was in a mental hospital. My delirious cry after I swallowed the sleeping pills that I would go where there were no women had now materialized in a truly uncanny way. My ward held only male lunatics, and the nurses were also men. There was not a single woman. I was no longer a criminal. I was a lunatic. But no, I was definitely not mad. I have never been mad for even an instant. They say, I know, that most lunatics claim the same thing. What it amounts to is that people who get put into this asylum are crazy, and those who don't are normal. God, I ask you, is non-resistance a sin? I had wept at the incredibly beautiful smile Horiki showed me, and forgetting both prudence and resistance, I had got into the car that took me there. And now I had become a madman. Even if released, I would be forever branded on the forehead with the word madman, or perhaps reject, disqualified as a human being. I had now ceased utterly to be a human being. I came at the beginning of summer. Though the iron bars over the windows I came at the beginning of summer. Through the iron bars over the windows I could see water lilies blossoming in the little pond of the hospital. 3 months later, when the cosmos were beginning to bloom in the garden, my eldest brother and Flatfish came, to my great surprise, to take me out. My brother informed me in his habitually serious, strained voice that my father had died of gastric ulcers at the end of the previous month. We won't ask any questions about your past, and we'll see to it that you have no worries as far as your living expenses are concerned. You won't have to do anything. The only thing we ask is that you leave Tokyo immediately. I know you undoubtedly have all kinds of attachments here, but we want you to begin your convalescence afresh in the country. He added that I needed not worry about my various commitments in Tokyo. Flatfish would take care of them. I felt as though I could see before my eyes the mountains and rivers back home. I nodded faintly. A reject, exactly. The news of my father's death eviscerated me. He was dead, that familiar frightening presence who had never left my heart for a split second. I felt as though the vessel of my suffering had become empty, as if nothing could interest me now. I had lost even the ability to suffer. My brother scrupulously carried out his promise. He bought a house for me at a hot spring on the coast, about 4 or 5 hours' journey by rail south of the town where I grew up, an unusually warm spot for that part of Japan. The house, a thatch-covered, rather ancient-looking structure, stood on the outskirts of the village. It had 5 rooms. The walls were peeled, and the woodwork was so worm-eaten as to seem almost beyond all possibility of repair. My brother also sent to look after me an ugly woman close to 60 with horrible rusty hair. Some 3 years have gone by since then. During this interval I have several times been violated in a curious manner by the old servant. Once in a while we quarrel like husband and wife. My chest ailment is sometimes better, sometimes worse. My weight fluctuates accordingly. Occasionally I cough blood. Yesterday I sent Tetsu, the old servant, off to the village drug store to buy some sleeping pills. She came back with a box rather different in shape from the one I'm accustomed to, but I paid it no particular attention. I took 10 pills before I went to bed, but was surprised not to be able to sleep at all. Presently, I was seized with a cramp in my stomach. I rushed to the toilet 3 times in succession with terrible diarrhea. My suspicions were aroused. I examined the box of medicine carefully. It was a laxative. As I lay on my bed staring at the ceiling, a hot water bottle on my stomach, I wondered whether I ought to complain to Tetsu. I thought of saying, "These aren't sleeping pills, they're a laxative," but I burst out laughing. I think reject must be a comic noun. I had taken a laxative in order to go to sleep. Now I have neither happiness nor unhappiness. Everything passes. That is the one and only thing I have thought resembled a truth in the society of human beings where I have dwelled up till now, as in a burning hell. Everything passes. This year I am 27. My hair has become much grayer. Most people would take me for over 40. Epilogue. I never personally met the madman who wrote these notebooks. However, I have a bare acquaintance with a woman who, as far as I can judge, figures in these notebooks as the madam of a bar in Kyobashi. She is a slightly built, rather sickly looking woman, with narrow tilted eyes and a prominent nose. Something hard about her gives you the impression less of a beautiful woman than of a handsome young man. The events described in the notebook seem to relate mainly to the Tokyo of 1930 or so, but it was not until about 1935, when the Japanese military clique was first beginning to rampage in the open, that friends took me to the bar. I drank highballs there 2 or 3 times. I was never able, therefore, to have the pleasure of meeting the man who wrote the notebooks. However, this February I visited a friend who was evacuated during the war in Funahashi in Shiba Prefecture. He is an acquaintance from university days and now teaches at a woman's college. My purpose in visiting him was to ask his help in arranging the marriage of one of my relatives, but I thought while I was at it I might buy some fresh seafood to take home to the family. I set off for Funahashi with a rucksack on my back. Funahashi is a fairly large town facing a bay. My friend had not lived there long, and even though I asked for his house by street and number, nobody seemed able to tell me the way. It was cold, and the rucksack hurt my shoulders. Attracted by the sound of the record of violin music being played inside a coffee shop, I pushed open the door. I vaguely remembered having seen the madam. I asked her about herself, and discovered she was in fact the madam of the bar in Kyobashi I had visited 10 years ago. When this was established, she professed to remember me also. We expressed exaggerated surprise, and laughed a great deal. There were many things to discuss, even without resorting, as people always did in those days, to questions about each other's experiences during the air raids. I said, "You haven't changed a bit." "No, I'm an old woman already. I creak at the joints. You're the one who really looks young." "Don't be silly. I've got 3 children now. I've come today to buy them some seafood." We exchanged these and other greetings appropriate to long separated friends, and asked for news of the mutual acquaintances. The madam suddenly broke off to ask, in a rather different tone, if I by chance had ever known Yozo. I answered that I never have, whereupon she went inside and brought out 3 notebooks and 3 photographs, which she handed to me. She said, "Maybe they'll make good material for a novel." I can never write anything when people force material on me, and I was about to return the lot to her without even examining it. The photographs, however, fascinated me, and I decided after all to accept the notebooks. I promised to stop by again on the way back, and asked if she had happened to know where my friend lived. As a fellow newcomer, she knew him. Sometimes, in fact, he even patronized her shop. His house was just a few steps away. That night, after drinking for a while with my friend, I decided to spend the night. I became so immersed in reading the notebooks that I didn't sleep a wink till morning. The events described took place years ago, but I felt sure that people today would still be quite interested in them. I thought that it would make more sense if I asked some magazine to publish the whole thing as it was, rather than attempt any clumsy improvements. The only souvenirs of the town I could get for my children were some dried fish. I left my friend's house with a rucksack still half empty, and stopped by the coffee shop. I came to the point at once. "I wonder if I could borrow these notebooks for a while." "Yes, of course. Is the man who wrote them still alive?" "I haven't any idea. About 10 years ago somebody sent me a parcel containing the notebooks and the photographs to my place in Kyobashi. I'm sure it was Yozo who sent it, but he didn't write his address or even his name on the parcel. It got mixed up with other things during the air raids, but miraculously enough the notebooks were saved. Just the other day I read through them for the first time." "Did you cry?" "No, I didn't cry. I just kept thinking that when human beings get that way, they're no good for anything. It's been 10 years. I suppose he may be dead already. He must have sent the notebooks to you by way of thanks. Some parts are rather exaggerated, I can tell, but you obviously suffered a hell of a lot at his hands. If everything written in these notebooks is true, I probably would have wanted to put him in an insane asylum myself if I were his friend." "It's his father's fault," she said unemotionally. "The Yozo we knew was so easygoing and amusing, And if only he hadn't drunk. No, even though he did drink, he was a good boy, an angel. The end. Yep, that's No Longer Human. It's a pretty good book, one of my favorite books. And that is going to do it for the day.